Please let Sargon go ahead.
Yeah, so do you think that there is any kind of social responsibility, Destiny,
To who and for what?
to the civilization that we've inherited, to the future of that civilization?
This is getting real financial. So I would argue that you have some responsibility to participate in society in a way that's not detrimental to other people. But I mean, as long as you're not necessarily hurting other people, then I think that for the most part, your rights should be respected to do what you want.
But what if this actually leads to the end of the society? Is there any moral?
What do you mean by end of society? Like humans go extinct, or like we lose a war?
I mean,
or
not humans, but like that society in particular. I mean, I guess at some point we're going to talk about birth rates. So let's assume that women just decide they're not going to have children.
I mean, I think I would be, that's a rough one, but I think I would be more okay with that than saying that like you are going to become the birthers and now you need to have children. I mean, it's interesting, like Nick posits this idea that people have these natural roles that they want to fill, but in the World War II era, it was attempted in several countries to incentivize people to have more children. People offered these massive payouts to people with more children. There were penalties if you didn't have enough, and it just doesn't work. Like if given the opportunity,
that's not true. It does work. In Denmark, they did just an ad campaign where they just encouraged people. Look, Denmark's birth rates are going down. Have kids, and there was like a 5% spike in the first year. It does work. It's all about what you, I know that this is persuade people is important. And if you think that your civilization is a good thing, then how is continuing that civilization not also a good thing? How is it not a moral responsibility?
That's a really heavy question on whether or not you have a moral responsibility to supersede an individual person's liberty in order to further the human race by forcing them to have children.
I didn't say it supersedes your liberty. I'm saying it gives you a duty, an obligation.
Sure. Also, I'm uncomfortable on the empirical grounds. I don't know about the Denmark thing, but I know that in World War II, I know that there were several countries that tried to heavily incentivize people to have children, and it failed. It never worked.
Sure, but in Denmark recently, it did work. So
okay, Denmark's birth rates are still below replacement. It's 1.7 births per woman.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Okay,
but there was an increase. So I think that culturally we could just have a cultural norm that it is the right thing to do, get married and have children, right?
I mean, you could, but I mean, like you're essentially saying that like culturally we should push people to do things that dramatically alter the course of their lives that they might not necessarily choose on their own. And I'm really uncomfortable with that type of push, unless you can make
this. Do that anyway.
Hopefully not to that extent. Or can you give me an example? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, culturally we push people not to use certain naughty words. We've got lots of cultural carrots and sticks.
Sargon knows all about that one, right?
Sure,
yeah,
but
exactly. I'm going to say the N-word.
Well, I'm talking about in terms of like having like dramatic impacts on people's lives. Like, yeah, we push people not to like
have a dramatic impact on your life.
Do you think that not using dirty words has the same impact on you as pushing somebody towards having a child?
Maybe. Who knows? But
if you legitimately believe that, then I can't.
I think that we're talking about two different things, right? Not letting people say the N-word is less substantial than forcing them into having a child. Like, I mean,
no one is suggesting that anyone can be forced by cultural factors. Okay. But there's definitely a cultural push in that direction, and I really do think that we are at the point where we have to start considering: is Western civilization worth continuing? Because I mean, we're getting to the point where it might not continue unless we actually make those decisions. And it is essentially, in a way, a kind of an excess of liberty that has done this. Technology has done this to us. It's actually freed us from all of the necessary bonds that we had in previous eras, because most people just weren't free enough to be able to choose a life without a family or without, having the various conditions thrust upon them by nature. So,
would you go back? Would you take back time and go back to an era where technological developments weren't at the place that it's at, and people weren't as economically stable, I guess, as they are on average in developed Western nations, in an effort to ensure that the birth rates are similar? Like, how much do you personally, Sargon, care about protecting like the Western race in a similar fashion to Nick? I just want to understand and distinguish your thoughts from his.
Okay, so I'm not really interested in answering that question, Hasan, because it's obviously loaded and pointless.
No. I don't think you agree with Nick. That's why I'm trying to make the distinction here.
I'm not really interested in like that, because it's never going to happen, right? But the thing that we can talk about, and this isn't a racial question, this is a civilizational question. I mean, like the idea that American civilization somehow excludes black people is ridiculous. They've been there from virtually day one. So it's
that's not a good point.
What?
Just because they've been there from day one. I'm pretty sure if you came over as a slave, you probably feel pretty excluded from society. Just the fact that you were there probably doesn't make you feel very excluded.
No, they had a place in society. It wasn't a good place, but they were so...
Okay, sure, but generally when somebody says something is inclusive, they don't necessarily mean just a place.
I never said
if I bring a friend
inclusive.
Well, you said they were included. I thought you said included. My bad.
Well, they were a part of it. No, but inclusive is a particular ideologically loaded word.
Yeah, it is.
It means something to progressives. They were still a part of that society, and they had a particular role, and it wasn't a good role. And I completely agree, obviously, with the abolition of slavery and Jim Crow and all this sort of nonsense. But the point is, from the position we're at now, Western birth rates are actually declining quite rapidly, and it looks like that this could actually be a bad thing in the long run. I mean, so the question is our society worth continuing? And then it's like, okay, well, how do we continue a society? Well, we have to make the voluntary choice to have, about at least 2 or 3 children each. So is that worth us doing? Is it a good idea? Because if it is a good idea, if we do think that maybe the West actually figured morality out better than the rest of the world, we do have an obligation to keep that going, because otherwise we're going to get people who are not believers in Western values, who do not come from Western cultures, who are just simply going to exist longer than we will, and will basically forget about us when we're gone.
I'm super curious. Where does that obligation to continue society come from?
Our moral judgment that our society is a good society.
Where do those moral judgments come from? Because if we're going to make this argument, we got to go real foundational here.
We our own moral perspectives.
So if let's say that you have a family, and this family, I say family, a husband and wife, okay? These 2 people want to be programmers. You think that you have the moral authority to tell them, no, you are going to have children because you have to, because we have an obligation to continue Western society.
Or dichotomy.
Well, okay. Let me soften that a little. Let's say that you think that you have a society full of people that could better allocate themselves into jobs where they would be personally happier. Do you think that you have the moral authority to push so much kind of cultural norms to these people that some of them decide to have children instead?
I think that we can have people who procreate and work at the same time.
Well, yeah, but it seems like given the option to choose to have children, people seem not to if they have the ability not to. That seems to be, I mean, for all that Nick talks about, like natural choices, that seems to be naturally what happens. If you look at countries as they become more first,
that's
it's
totally artificial.
Feel like that's an outcome of the current economic climate. Like,
no, I think no. This is like a very well observed phenomenon. As countries enter first world status, people just have less children. They don't need to have as many children.
Except for Israel. Israel's birth rate's going up, but. Never mind that there's Silicon Valley.
Okay, one at a time. For one second, we cannot focus on fucking Jewish people. I know it's real hard for you, Nick, but let's keep
hold on.
One at a time, please.
Before we get fully into foundational philosophy, I really want to understand what you mean when you talk about Western civilization. Can you point to a specific example that does not include other cultures and other civilizations and other technological achievements created in like the Islamic culture, for example, in the golden age of Islam, that the Western civilization has backed on, that has built itself upon? I mean,
Hasan, I'm not saying that Western civilization has not been influenced by other civilizations.
It's not just influence. I mean, this is how it works. Like, we've always had globalism. Like, we've always had globalization. We've always, as a consequence of trade,
I agree. People have always talked to each other and traded with one another and fought with one another. I agree.
Yeah.
Humans move. Yes, I agree.
Okay, so when you talk about the preservation of Western civilization,
Hasan, hold that thought 1 second.
And you talk about birth rates, what?
Let me interject real quick. On Hasan, please continue after. Let's wrap this up and get to the next topic. I think we've really went off on a tangent here.
Dude, I've been able to finish.
Not you,
point.
not you. I'm referring to everyone else, not just you. You continue.
Okay.
Finish your point.
I know your chat like spamming fucking Pepega and shit when I'm talking, but holy fuck, let me just like get one thing out.
I will put it. There you go.
Okay.
Continue.
Bad?
All right.
Relax,
more importantly, the thing that I'm trying to understand. Look, like, why are we trying to preserve civilization or Western civilization, or why are we trying to make sure that like mankind continues an interesting conversation? I guess maybe it's not to me. What I'm specifically trying to understand right now is that why we're talking about birth rates without talking about the actual factors that contribute to birth rates declining. We know that it's technological achievements is one of them, socioeconomic status is one of them, and we see this with like immigrant cultures that are also coming in, or immigrants that are coming into like American society and integrating into American society, and by the 3rd generation completely adapting and their birth rates adjusting to the existing like ethnic groups that are already living in America or in Western civilization in general. This is consistent across time, and it's consistent in all of these other countries. So when we talk about like the declining of the birth rates, it's not a matter of like other people are coming in and replacing the original like ethnicity of that country. It's more so that people are actually fucking less, quite frankly, because they have more access to technology and they're wealthier, and they get they use condoms and shit. So
Sure,
what do you want to do? How do you want to reverse that if you want to actually reverse that?
Hang on. Right, I don't really care about the ethnicity. It's not really the question, right? Because what you've identified correctly is that this is a malaise that is going to affect humanity eventually, when all nations will eventually reach a sort of level of technological expertise and wealth, where the question of is really, do we have a responsibility to what we've inherited to pass that down to someone, or are we allowed to be selfish enough to be the end point of that?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Are we going to move on to the next topic?
I think that, I mean, unless Destiny or Hasan has anything to add, let's just go ahead and go to the next